go out and you talk a certain way, and you act like you're some kind of Rust Belt native or something. That is peak identity politics right there. And for me, just to say that I'm trying to represent the American community that I come from is like somehow identity politics. Why? Like why? Because I'm not male, or because like is it only identity politics if you're a racial minority, or is it only identity politics if you're gender non-conforming or whatever?
Right.
But for me, what's really important is, I come from a district that is 70% people of color, is 60% Hispanic, is 40% primarily Spanish speaking, and we don't have that representation in Congress. And way back in the day, so I grew up kind of between two worlds. I grew up half in the Bronx, and then I also grew up half going to public school 40 minutes north of the Bronx. And so in my public school, I was the only Latina, really like the only person of color, one of the only people of color in my grade. There were like maybe 4 or 5 students of color in a class of like 300, or like Latinos or African American students, I should say, in our class of like 300 or 400 students. And so when I was in that environment as a young person, I was kind of, I feel, conditioned to devalue my identity. I felt like I had to, I feel like I kind of subconsciously bought into the like we don't see color type of thing, but with that,
we're all the same.
We're all the same.
Right.
There's no such thing as race. Like, why do we care about race? And as a very, very young person, only surrounded by people of that opinion, when I tried as a young person to integrate that into my own life, just because that's what everyone around me believed, I found that what that actually translated to is me being embarrassed to speak Spanish in public, me being embarrassed of my culture or of who I am, or to say that I'm Latina, and that is oppressive. It's oppressive. It's a really subconscious kind of nefarious way that works, and so it was really kind of my experiences still as a young person in my teenage years, when I really started to kind of delve deep into my own identity and delve deep into what it meant to be Puerto Rican. And that in and of itself is such a conflicted identity that I still struggle with it today. Like, am I doing it right? You know?
Right.
Because Puerto Rican people, our political status is in the air, in some ways we have the privilege of being documented Americans, but in other ways we are born with no real political status. We're second-class citizens. We aren't allowed to vote in presidential elections, and when things like we just saw, Hurricane Maria hits, we are forgotten.
Right, and it's like so many Americans didn't even know that Puerto Rico was an American territory.
Yeah, and I grew up around that. Like, I grew up like, even as I run, there'll be some trolls out there, and they'll be like, go back to whatever country you came from, or like, what country did you come from? And I was like, I was born here, and my family has been here since Native peoples. So, so I don't know where you're trying to get me to go.
Right.
But also kind of asserting the fact that as a person who is, a United States citizen, my family has been U.S. citizens for generations, to assert that too is Latino is something that is important to me.
Right. And
something that's important to all of us, because we think of American history as one color or like one identity, but really when this nation was founded, there were already Native American people here, there were already Native American that turned into Hispanic people here. There were.
And that experience is very different for different people depending on what background you were from.
Right, exactly. And so it's really a continuous exploration, and I tried to kind of have a public conversation about it instead of it being a stance. Like, my identity is not a stance.
Right.
And I don't think identity in general is a stance. It's kind of it's an idea in a way, but it's also rooted. You know, it's real. It's not imagined, but it's something that I think every person starts to kind of add to, construct, and discover about themselves.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things I think that has contributed to a little more depth in the conversation from identity politics, which is often viewed as just like, I'm this, or I'm that, or I represent this, instead to what we often call intersectionality, right? Which is this idea that our identities and our experiences are socially constructed, and they have this place in the world, and they are real. They're socially constructed, and they're real in how they're politically manifested and the way people experience life.